Is your interior beat beyond repair? Or maybe you're just looking for something new? Well, today I'm going to show you if it's possible to make your own custom interior just like mine with very little to no sewing experience. Let me first start out by saying that this is going to take a lot of patience. I've been working on this project for about 2 months total, and I think about 40 hours of total working hours. This was also my first attempt at any big sewing project, so it will be much easier for people with more experience. So the first thing you're going to need is a good sewing machine. So the first sewing machine I was using was probably older than I am, and really only had one speed setting. As you can see, it kind of just went Mach 10 whenever I would touch the pedal. There was no option to go slow and take your time, which is very important when you're doing such detailed sewing. So that made me decide to get a new sewing machine. So this sewing machine is a Singer 4423 heavy-duty sewing machine. I believe it was $150 on Walmart, and it did a really good job throughout the entire process of building my seats. Another thing that's very important is sewing needles and strings. As you can see here, I broke a few needles while making these seats. You got to make sure that you're getting needles that are rated for whatever material you're using. I was using leather or the vinyl, which is basically faux leather. You want to make sure that your needles are able to substand the thickness, especially when you're going through multiple layers of your material. And also you want your thread to be outdoor thread so it can stand up to the heat of your hot car. So once you have all of your sewing equipment, you can move on to choosing what materials you want to actually construct your seats out of. For my seats, I chose a mixture of both cloth and vinyl, just to kind of give it a more modern sort of GTI look. Another thing that's very important is foam. This is kind of to give your seats more cushion as well, especially if the old foam inside of the seats is very worn down. And for your materials, you're definitely going to want to buy more than you're actually going to need. For both of my front seats, I bought a total of 7 yards of both fabric and also foam. So once you have all of your materials, you can start to actually dismantle the seats. This part of the seat building process I found was actually the most frustrating part of the entire process, so please don't get discouraged at this point. It's very frustrating, and also be ready to end up having lots of cuts on your fingers because you're going to be dealing with a lot of small metal pieces. It is also important to document how the seats came off and take detailed pictures so that you can put them back on the way that they came off. After you have the covers off, you can move to disassembling each of the covers. But before you start disassembling, it's a good idea to mark each of the pieces of the seats so that you know how they'll go back together. I use tick marks and a combination of numbers and letters to mark how each seam is connected. For the actual disassembling part, I used a seam ripper to rip each of the individual seams to give me a pattern to copy onto a new piece of material. Once you've seam ripped the entire seat, you can move on to copying the shapes of each piece onto a new piece of your material. When tracing the shape, you also want to make sure not to trace the extra portion of the patterns that were used to be sewn to the other patterns of the seats, because this will make the shape too big and again will throw off the shapes of all of your seats and they won't fit right. Once you have your pattern traced onto your new material, You want to use a ruler to measure a 1/2 inch out from the line you drew, and this will be the line that you're cutting on, and the middle line will be the line that you end up sewing on. If the piece of the seat that you had transferred onto the new material had foam on it as well, it's probably a good idea to take the piece that you just cut out and trace it onto a new piece of foam. Then you will take that and sew it together to make one complete piece. When you have a piece that's going to have foam attached to it, it's a good idea to sew it to the actual piece itself before you retrace the pattern onto the foam. This is because I found that when you're sewing the foam, sometimes it can get stretched and it'll throw off the marks, which will in the end throw off the way the pattern fits onto the seat. You're also going to want to sew as close to the edge as possible when sewing foam to the piece in order to give yourself as much room to attach two pieces together when assembling the full seat. When it comes to sewing the pieces together, it's a good idea to pin them together just to make sure that they don't come apart while you're sewing them, especially if you have a piece that's not necessarily the same length from the seam to the edge. You need to use the lines to line them up. So what I found is if you fold the pieces over and use both your thumbs on each of the lines and make sure your thumbnails touch each other. That's how I was lining up the lines, and I would use the tick marks that we drew earlier to make sure that they were lined up. I'll then take pins and pin them together just to hold them in place, and then take them out as I'm sewing. Make sure that as you're going, you're test fitting each piece onto the actual seat itself just to make sure that they're fitting the way that you want them to. I found that the most difficult part of the seat to sew was actually the back part. This is because there's a lot of little pieces and also many pieces that overlap each other. So if you have one piece folded over, you can accidentally sew it to another piece, which in turn could actually ruin the entire thing and you might have to start over again. So make sure you're just regularly turning it inside out and double checking that everything is looking the way that it's supposed to and how it should be sitting on the seat foam. So once you have both the top and bottom seats fully sewn together, you can work on permanently fixing it to the seat. This is where the pictures you took earlier of how the seats were mounted to the frame will come in handy. Finally, just reattach the seat back to the seat base, just as you took it apart, and now your custom interior is complete. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about doing your own seats or making your own seats, stuff like that, I'll try to help you the best I can. Just leave a comment down below and I'll reply as fast as I can. If you enjoyed the content that I make, check out my other stuff. I make a lot of Volkswagen content with my 2 cars. Stay tuned for more updates with my things and all of the new mods that I'll be doing in the future.